Hello, everyone. My name is Praveen Nara. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is diabetes management. We'll be talking about preventive care techniques at various stages of diabetes and case studies from diabetes patients and health heroes. This event is brought to you by Crack the Wellness Code, a program of ICC India Community Center. It's North America's largest secular community center for South Asians. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Soham Patel. He's triple board certified in internal medicine and endocrinology, diabetes, metabolism, and lifestyle medicine. I won't fully introduce him as I'm going to invite Dr. Pankaj Vij, who is a co-founder and doctor patron at CWC ICC. Pankaj knows a lot more about Soham than I do, so he will fully introduce him to you. I do want to acknowledge that Dr. Patel is actually on the East Coast and it's already 10 p.m. for him. So, Soham, thank you for your commitment and dedication to continue adding value to our community and staying up late tonight. And we also have on our panel Dr. Archana Bindra, past president of AAPIO, American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. On this webinar, you will learn preventive care techniques on how you can effectively manage diabetes. You will also hear some case studies about how people navigate this prevalent disease. Now, let me introduce Dr. Pankaj Vij. Dr. Pankaj is the current president. So Archana Bindra is the previous president and our past president, I should say. And Dr. Pankaj Vij is the current president of AAPIO, American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. He's also a co-founder and doctor patron of CWC ICC. Pankaj is a board member of American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and he's also author of the book Turbo Metabolism. With that, Pankaj, please take it away.
Thank you, Praveen. And once again, I want to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to all of our participants from all over the world to our 70th, yes, 70th session since the start of the pandemic. We were able to quickly leverage into basically a digital organization. And today it's my distinct pleasure to introduce my friend, Dr. Soham Patel, who joins us all the way from Florida. And I think we have a formal slide of all his accomplishments, but like many of us, he is a physician of Indian origin who came to the United States and got further training, and he's a board certified endocrinologist. And I got to know him a couple of years ago with our mutual involvement, our passion with lifestyle medicine. We actually met at one of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine meetings a couple of years ago. And there it is. He's triple board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and lifestyle medicine. And he spends a significant chunk of time reading the latest nutritional research. And in fact, he's well known for a debate that he had with a very prominent endocrinologist on the power of lifestyle medicine and the power of a whole food plant-based diet. But I'm not going to read to you. You can read to yourselves. A couple of fun facts about him is that he's actually trained in Indian classical music, and he's very good at playing the keyboard and harmonium. And if we're nice to him, maybe in another session, he can do a little music for us. And he was inspired by his grandfather, his Nanaji, who at the age of 77 could beat Soham going up a spiral staircase of 177 steps. And he says that his Nanaji was his inspiration into learning about the power of lifestyle, the power of food and exercise and sleep and stress, which he's going to tell us all about. And it's past 10 p.m. there, and he's been gracious enough to join. All it took was one quick phone call, and he said, of course, and we really appreciate his generosity. He has a 7-month-old baby daughter that is probably going to keep him up part of the night. So Soham, thank you very much for joining us so late at night. And with that introduction, take it over. Take it away, Soham. Welcome to California and worldwide.
Thank you, Pankaj. Good evening from Florida to all the participants. It's an honor for me to be part of this activity. and get to share whatever knowledge I have gained over the years back with the community, because I've learned from my patients and from my colleagues and my teachers, and if we don't share it back, it's of no value. So, as Pankaj mentioned, my source of motivation for getting into nutrition and lifestyle changes was my Nanaji, and he could easily beat me to the spiral staircases of the Taibi Lighthouse at the age of 24, and he was 77. So over the last 11 years, I've invested on my health, and I think I'm in a better shape now than I was when I was 24. Um, so with that, I'm gonna start. Um, the first thing we want to understand, today's talk is on diabetes, but first we want to understand what is disease. So as you see on the slide there, disease is actually the body is not at ease, dis-ease. And the things that happen to take our body from ease to disease leads to disease. So there are a few different pathological processes that are kind of the core processes that cause a lot of different health problems. One of the first ones in that process is chronic inflammation, wherein our body has this ravaging amount of cells, inflammatory cells that are causing micro fires, so to speak, inside the arteries and the tissues. And that process going over time leads to more changes in our DNA expression in the cells, which leads to either the cells multiplying abnormally or starting to react in a different manner. We also see buildup of a lot of toxins in our body over time, and that chronic toxicity that we find from air, food, water, our thoughts. There's a lot of negative, uh, information out there in the media and in the world right now. So we are designed to pick up on negative information faster than positive, and that's what we are surrounded with. So that builds up over time. And then insulin resistance, which is the key process that actually leads to high blood pressure, high cholesterol, uh, weight going up, obesity, eventually type 2 diabetes. In women, it also causes a condition called polycystic ovarian disease, or PCOS, as it's called here. So all those spectrum of diseases actually start from insulin resistance, which is the key process. Now, for understanding and making sure we are all on the same page, this talk is primarily going to focus on pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, which involves the body's lack of not making any insulin, uh, also has a portion of resistance, but that's a different topic. So to keep it focused, we're going to focus on type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes that connects directly from insulin resistance. So what is insulin resistance? And this slide here is showing that in a more easy to understand aspect, like in domino. So one of the key processes that can lead to insulin resistance is buildup of excess fat inside our liver cells. Our liver has fat inside its cells, but when it starts exceeding 15% of uh, total cell volume, um, it starts. So what I mean is, when you start eating more than 15% of your total calories in your day-to-day intake in form of fat, it starts depositing into the liver cells, and that process starts interfering with the function of the insulin receptor. So insulin is a hormone that your pancreas releases, which goes through the blood and binds to the insulin receptor like a lock and key on top of your liver cell. And if that receptor on the inside is kind of blocked, like a chewing gum blocking a door latch, the key of insulin is not going to be able to unlock that receptor, and the cell will have hard time taking up glucose from the bloodstream. Now, initially, your body can compensate that by producing more insulin. But if that process keeps getting worse and worse, you reach a point where your body is making maximum amount of insulin, and you're still not able to utilize that insulin in a manner that you should. So the liver cannot take up the glucose. It starts pushing more fat into other parts of the body, like muscles and pancreas. So there is more buildup of fat in those cells as well, and all those cells start having resistance to the effect of insulin. And that's where diabetes starts appearing. Initially, sugar starting to be running in the low hundreds, and then frankly going above 125, 130, and then running even higher. So that's how the diabetes slowly creeps up on us. Taking a kind of a 30,000 feet view of where we are right now, and this slide is talking about US, but I think I won't be wrong if I say this is pretty much a similar scenario across the world, where processed foods have taken up a major chunk of our diet. So as you see, the biggest portion of the pie, there is that yellow color, which is 63% of processed foods, and 25%, again, we're talking here of US data, but as I said, it's pretty similar. 25% comes from animal foods, and only 12% comes from plant foods. And even in that 12%, half of that 12% is processed plant foods, like a fig bar or something that may have some plant-based food, but it's highly processed. So only 6% of one's daily food consumption is coming really from fruits, vegetables, and beans and whole grains, things which are as close to nature as we can get them, not processed or refined. So if we talk about it in this aspect, one of the goals to work towards your health and wellness is to work on taking that 6%, or wherever you are in that category, 10%, 12%, 15, to almost close to 90-95% coming from whole plant foods. So we talked about, where our body gets into disease, and now we are going to focus more into what things can get our body back into ease. And broadly, there are 6 categories. Nutrition, predominantly whole plant foods; activity, rest and relaxation; a positive mindset; and detoxing, not just from toxins from body, but also from your mind. And that connects back to the first portion that I actually didn't mention, because it loops all the remaining 5, is cleansing our 5 elements. We are made up of 5 elements: water, air, space, earth, and sky, fire. So these 5 elements, 70% of our body is water, 6% is earth, and the remaining is made up of the fire, space or sky or akash, and air. And those elements get mismatched because of the lifestyle that we pursue. And very simple steps, like making sure you're not eating throughout the day, but you're at least having 12 to 14 hours of no food overnight, can create more space in your body. When you take a walk in the nature, when you take a walk barefoot on some grass or soil, you connect back with earth. When you take a shower, you feel well because you're connecting back to the predominant element in your body, which is water. When you drink enough water, you are making sure you're keeping your water balance in the right ratio. When you're getting some sunlight, you support your fire element. So there are simple things that you can do that can help balance those 5 elements. If I just spare 30 seconds on water, we tend to sip water through the day, but for water to work properly and not cause a lot of change in your sodium balance in the blood, because every time you drink water, the sodium balance has to adjust, and that causes changes in your brain, swelling versus shrinking up in terms of volume. So when you drink water, make sure you drink a whole glass of water or two or whatever you want to drink, but drink enough at a time rather than sipping on it every few minutes. The purpose of drinking enough at a time is that whatever sodium exchange and balance has to happen happens right away, and it doesn't keep happening every few minutes. So your brain maintains the right volume and it doesn't keep bobbling on and off. And whatever the body needs, it utilizes, the rest it discards through the urine. And if you make sure you're hydrated enough through the day, you don't have to keep pounding more water at night, because if you drink more water at night time, guess what? You're going to stay up at night going to the bathroom, which affects your sleep, which affects your health. So simple things like this. Another point on water is, the water that we get is made up of, elements, which again has crystalline structures. In India, we had always this habit that we would fill up water in a big container in our kitchen, and then you know people would pray at the water every day. That prayer will send positive vibes to the water. And there have been studies done looking at the crystalline structure of water when someone curses the water, whereas someone prays at the water. The whole symmetry of those molecules is completely different when you pray or you have something with the good mindset versus if you have it with a angry or a disruptive mindset. So simple things like drinking enough at a time, making sure the water is steady in a container before you drink it with some good thoughts, can really create good energy in your body. Taking a walk in the nature, like I mentioned, can help you connect with the nature, can help you exchange ions with the soil, which is very detoxing for the body. Getting sunlight and fresh air, again, your mind feels well, you get vitamin D. There are so many benefits of it. So cleansing the elements is the key. And at the same time, stopping the crap from entering your body is another key aspect. So stop the crap, as a C for carbonated drinks, diet or regular, doesn't matter. Both are equally bad. Refined sugars, artificial foods that are completely modified and don't look like any food that comes from nature, and things that have been processed. Example, eating a baked sweet potato or a boiled sweet potato is completely different than eating French fries. Both come from potato, but they are highly modified. One is highly modified, other is more natural. So understanding also how our body responds to the food. See, we don't have, once we pass the taste buds in our mouth, the body doesn't have any calorie receptors throughout the body. It only has volume receptors in the stomach, which expand mechanically. So when we eat food, the stomach expands and it sends signal to the brain that you're getting full, you're about to stop eating. When you chew your food well, the process of the jaw opening and expand, closing, uh, if you do it consistently, like you chew your bites at least 20 times before you swallow, that process will send signals to your brain that you're eating enough food. So going back to this slide, when you eat fruits and vegetables, you fill up your whole stomach for 500 calories. When you fill up your stomach with potato, rice, and beans, you can almost 80-85% fill up your stomach. Any type of meat, white or red, doesn't really matter. Only 40% for 500 calories. Any type of cheese, barely 20-25% for 500 calories. And even the best type of oil from the best part of the world will only fill up 10% of your stomach for 500 calories. So just from this one slide, I can tell you it's very simple that the more fiber rich foods you consume, The more nutrients you get and the less calories you get, your body automatically starts going into more balance, because that fiber provides food for the bacteria in your gut, which we have trillions of bacteria. So if we have a healthy variety of bacteria in our gut, then we have a healthy self. If we don't have the healthy bacteria, then we don't have a health. So eating fiber-rich foods provides for a better microbiome, and at the same time makes you satiated, that you are full, you're not starving yourself, and you get all the good nutrients along with the fiber, which slows down the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. So drinking fruit juice for 100 calories versus eating a piece of fruit for 100 calories is totally different, because when you eat the piece of fruit, you have to chew that, you have to break it down in your mouth, the stomach has to break it down further, process that, digest through the intestine, and then finally the glucose slowly gets to the liver. And the liver can easily handle that. But if you drink juice or soda or any refined form of sugar, for that matter, your liver gets all that calories in a very short time, and it cannot handle that burden. And one time of that is not big deal, but if it happens day in and day out, that's where things start happening and you build up insulin resistance. So where do you want to go towards in terms of nutrition? And this is a busy slide, but I want you to focus on the colors. On the right side of the screen, as you can see, and this talks about US data, but significant number of people do not have enough colors in their diet. Close to 60, 70, 80% of people do not consume enough red or blue or green or yellow or white colors in our diet. So the goal is to work on ramping up different variety of color rich foods that come from the plant kingdom in our daily meals. And you don't have to have all the colors in a single day, but you can space them out and distribute it throughout the week, so that you get the variety of nutrients through the week and not have the pressure or the stress to get all the colors packed in a single day. There are a lot of protein, not protein, but a lot of vitamin and nutrient powders, or packs made from fruits and vegetables that would claim that you get all your nutrients in a single day, but your body doesn't process all those nutrients in a single shot like that. They process it together in a complex symphony, step by step. So as long as you're eating different colors through the week, you're covered. And on the left part of the screen is kind of an ideal plate of what the different proportion of the food should be. So fruits and vegetables should fill up half of your daily meals, and 25% should be coming from different plant sources of protein, like beans, lentils, or what we call legumes, and different nuts and seeds, dry fruits as we call it in India, or dry nuts, and remaining should be whole grains. So in India and also over here, there is a predominant um, focus lately on processed foods, and especially processed wheat, like maida. So the variety of grain intake has gone down. We just eat a lot of wheat and rice, and not all the variety of different grains that we have. Each portion of India has a different variety of grain that's endemic to that particular region. There is ragi, there is millets, there is barley, there is all whole variety of different grains. So trying to have variety of different grains in your daily meals, and not just focusing on one particular type of grain like wheat or rice. And when you consume wheat or rice, you want to focus on more wholesome forms of those, like uh, split wheat, like bulgur wheats, or brown rice, rather than white rice or refined flour like maida. But and again, the focus is to work towards this goal. You don't have to worry about getting there overnight, but if you have a goal that you want to go towards, and you're working on it 10% or 5% at a time, you will eventually reach there. And there are so many different spices and herbs which add different benefits in terms of immune system, digestion, cardiac health, brain health, like turmeric, like cumin. um, there is clove and cinnamon. So there are so many different herbs and spices that you can use to flavor your foods and not have to rely on oil and sugar and salt to flavor your food, but get the variety from the different spices and herbs. And lastly, making sure you're hydrating yourself well, like I mentioned, relying on water more. If you don't like the taste of plain water, you can put a slice of lemon in it, you can put a slice of orange, you can put some mint leaves, you can put some cucumber slices. You can flavor your water naturally through different fruits or vegetables every day, but rely on drinking water and make sure you drink enough water at a time and not sip through it. Another way to look at food is think of it in terms of a traffic light system. So all the green light foods in the top list are foods which you can consume as much as you want to fill yourself up without worrying about the portions, because the fiber in these foods will automatically limit the amount you consume. The only exception to that list is white rice and white potatoes, um, because they have more refined and not as unprocessed. The yellow foods are the ones that have nutrients, but they also have a lot of fat. So you want to limit the amount to a handful a day. So handful of nuts and seeds like almonds and walnuts, or some hemp seeds, or half an avocado, or some coconut shreds, or olives in your salad. Those foods should be consumed in a limited amount, not overdoing that, because if you overdo that, you add a lot more fat, and that can cause issues with your liver, which eventually leads to more insulin problems. And the foods that you're trying to avoid, again, nothing overnight, but that's the goal you want to work towards, is avoiding foods that are highly processed. So even foods that are plant-based but highly processed and refined and fried, avoid those. And foods that come from animal kingdom like dairy, eggs, and all types of different meat, from fish to steaks. The less is better. Again, the goal is to eat whole foods. So if for you it is practical to eat 80% whole plant foods and have 20% animal foods to make it sustainable, that is better than eating 100% plant based but eating more processed crap. So make sure you focus on eating whole plant foods, actual fruits, actual beans, vegetables, and whole grains, obviously cooked, um, and not focus on processed foods. And you can keep working on taking that percentage up as you cut back on animal foods. The faster you do it, the more faster you get the benefits. The slower you make the change, the slower the benefits you get. So exercise and rest and relaxation, again, the idea is to keep our body in motion. Latest research is piling up showing that the damage that would happen from someone smoking is the same damage that can happen if we sit for long hours without moving. And in our today's lifestyle, we sleep, we are flat, we wake up, eat breakfast, we are sitting, drive a car, we are sitting, go to our work, we are sitting, come back home, we are sitting. So there's a lot of sitting time. So making sure, if you have an option to work at a desk that you can change the height, you can change that and stand up while working, or just putting a reminder on your phone every hour or couple hours, get up 30 seconds, go around, and come back, which gives you some activity. You can move your feet while you're sitting down. You can even start with 5 minutes of walking every day. The goal would be to get to 40-45 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, which would be something like brisk walking, where you can talk but not sing. That's the pace of brisk walking. But you don't have to worry about reaching there overnight. You start with 5 minutes. Every week, take it up by 10 minutes. In 8 weeks or 9 weeks, you'll be at 45 minutes of walking every day. So that's how we can build up habits. If you like a sport, play that sport. If you like exercise, working in a gym, do that. Whatever you enjoy doing is what you want to do, because if you are going to do something that you do not enjoy, not only are you're not going to sustain that, but also it's going to create more stress in your body and more cortisol, which is going to affect your health adversely. So pick an activity or exercise that you enjoy doing and you can sustain that. Getting enough sleep, there's a picture of a child sleeping there, and I get to see my daughter, every day. When kids wake up, they don't wake up right away. They spray their hands apart and they yawn, smile, and then they wake up. We as adults have forgotten that, joy of waking up. I mean, we wake up and we want to go in 100 directions. So making sure you take 5 minutes when you wake up and have a routine where you're stretching yourself, feeling some gratitude for being alive, waking up. That's a huge. Having whatever you have in your life and not focusing on what you don't have, but what you do have. And some deep breathing, meditation, prayer, whatever you like. You can do yoga if you are interested in that. Uh, Whatever system you can define or design that you can do on a sustainable basis, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever you can work through, but something that you can start your day in a proper mindset. Because if you have that mindset to start with, there's a good likelihood you would have a better day than if you don't start with that in the morning. Sleep hygiene, so trying to make sure you're going to bed at a good time, right, somewhere around 9, 10, maybe by 11, not spending too much time on a blue screen. And again, what I'm doing right now is not what I do commonly, but yes, try and go to bed by 9:30, 10, and limit the amount of blue light exposure before at least an hour of your bedtime. Not getting hooked on the news or your social media before bedtime, thinking about your day, writing it down, listening to some relaxing music, taking a warm shower, making sure you work on avoiding plastic in your day to day life, drink enough water, have some form of activity that you sweat, which is a good means to detox. Limit your cyber or social exposure from electronic stuff, so you limit that negativity. Work on your emotional health. If you have a relationship that needs to be mended up, work on that, because an old wound that you have from years will cause more cortisol release in your body, which eventually will lead to more problems. So any old emotional wounds, if you cannot completely salvage that, make sure you forgive that person from your end. Even if that person doesn't forgive you, that's their problem. But from your end, work on forgiveness and gratitude, and that together will allow you to, get back to better health. So, summing up, balancing your five elements, focusing on eating whole plant foods which are rich with nutrients, color, and fiber, and avoiding foods which are negative energy or dead foods which predominantly come from animal kingdom. Staying active, again, you don't have to be a marathoner or a gym goer. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can connect, whatever you can do. If you have arthritis in your feet, do some hand activity. Work on whatever movement you can do. Relaxing, having rest in your day, making sure you have the right mindset, working on cleansing your body with some activity, cyber detox, good water, good sleep, green juices, cilantro, mint, celery. Those are good ways to get rid of heavy metals. So step by step, as Hippocrates said, the natural force within us is the greatest healing source that can get us to, better health.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Dr. Soham Patel, that is a great talk. Thank you so much for this amazing information. I mean, 15% excess dietary fat can make so much difference and make people get diabetes. And also another point I really liked in what you said is I heard from multiple so-called experts that you keep a glass of, the bottle right next to you and keep drinking continuously. But what you're suggesting is to balance your sodium level, drink 1 glass or 2 glass at a time, and then give a break. That's great information. Thank you for that. And with that, Dr. Vij, please take over in
Thank you.
praising Dr. Patel.
Thank you, Praveen, and thank you, Dr. Soham Patel, for joining us all the way from Florida. It is late. It is actually 10:40 p.m. your time, and you're joining us and sacrificing your sleep, looking at blue light. So again, immense gratitude from all of us here and really our global audience as well. I'm going to kick
Thank you.
off the Q&A. We don't want to keep you too late, so I'll keep it quick. I'm going to ask you a question that I get all the time, and I'm referring back to your red light, yellow light, green light system. And we talked about probiotics, we talked about gut bacteria, and one question that I often get, especially from my Indian patients, is that we grew up thinking of yogurt as the ultimate source of good bacteria in the diet. So how do we resolve that if we have dairy in the red light part of the graph? A question that I'm sure a lot of people listening have is, wait a minute, I heard all my life that dairy was good for me, particularly when I'm eating yogurt or curd. The sugar has been digested by the bacteria and it's full of healthy bacteria. So how do we resolve that?
So I'm gonna share my own story and then go on to what I've gained over the time. So I grew up in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat. Spent 24 years of my life there, and I can tell you that I followed that same dictum. I had 3 glasses of milk a day. They started with milk, ended with milk, and I at least had a pound or sometimes even more homemade curd or yogurt every day. For people who are familiar to Ahmedabad climate, it's very hot, tropical. It can get to 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer times. So I could easily gulp down, a liter of buttermilk, which is basically water churned with yogurt and some cumin and black salt. So from there, once I started looking at the data, I realized the amount of dairy we consume has gone up substantially. My forefathers were farmers from north part of Gujarat, and I've seen, I was quite small, but I've seen my great grandfather, and his amount of dairy consumption was a very small percentage of his daily meals. His life was quite simple: going to bed by 8, waking up at 4, working throughout the day, and simple thoughts, simple life. From there, we are now in a situation where we have so many things we do. We are not active as much. We tend to eat late nights. We tend to eat many more times than what our forefathers used to do. And the amount of dairy consumption we have has gone up from maybe 5% to more like 30-35%. This is more like of my observational estimate. I can tell you that my niece and nephews back in India, none of them eats the traditional Gujarati food anymore. They want to eat pizza and pasta and burgers. That's not what I grew up eating. I had roti and shak, or sabzi and dal and things like that. So um, people have gone away from traditional foods, and the amount of dairy has gone up. So that is playing a role. Number two, if you look at dairy foods in a spectrum, looking at milk, cheese, yogurt, or butter, yogurt, relatively speaking, in all those dairy foods is nutritionally better because of the probiotics. But where it doesn't help you much is it's still an acidic food. The pH of any dairy foods is below 7. So when you consume even yogurt, you're getting the probiotics, but you are not feeding that same alkaline environment that your microbiome needs. You're giving it more acidic food, and that doesn't help the probiotics in your yogurt to fully benefit you. So if you had a little bit of yogurt through here and there, that's a different story. Then you're going to say, I'm going to consume yogurt as a health food every day, because it's still acidic, and the benefit on the microbiome is not full-fledged because of the acidity of that food. And in same line, another common question that we also get, I'm sure, is ghee. So yes, ghee, doesn't have any milk solids. It's been taken out. It doesn't have any casein because that has been destroyed by heating the cream at or butter at that moderate heat. It's purely fat, but it is high in oxidized LDL. So you want to think of oxidized LDL as this kind of micro bombs that can be dropped on your artery lining, and it causes holes in the artery lining that can cause to more plaque buildup. So if you told me I consume a little bit of ghee here and there, that's a different story than I'm gonna have a big spoon of ghee with every meal. There is value to ghee as a vehicle of medicine delivery because ghee is completely fat and our cell wall is made up of fat. So if you want to deliver something to the cell, all the Ayurvedic medications are most of the times designed to be given in some ghee. Uh, that makes sense as a medicinal use of ghee. But to say that ghee is healthy and I'm going to start having, dollops full of ghee every day is not going to help you. So if you have it as a flavor here and there, that's a different story. And I want to loop back to my own transformation. So from consuming 3 glasses of milk a day, a pound of yogurt every day, I stopped it about 6 years ago overnight. And within 3 weeks, I lost 20 pounds coming off from my belly just like that. And I said, okay, the only thing I changed is I stopped having my milk and my yogurt. Let me introduce back a small cup of yogurt every day for lunch. I did that for a week and I gained back 5 pounds.
Wow, that's a
And
lot.
then I stopped again, it came off again. And within 3 months of not consuming dairy, my microbiome had changed so much that I was at a friend's place and they had made fruit salad, as we call in Gujarati, make in Gujarat. It's heavy cream, milk, sugar, and fruits. And so that used to be my favorite dessert. So I had a bowl of that, and it kept me up all night because of belching and stomach upset and diarrhea. So something that I used to consume for 30 years without realizing, just by not having it for 3 months, my microbiome had changed so much that I could not handle it. I used to have constipation all my early life. I used to have issues with dry skin, putting a lot of cream even in winter and summertime. Uh, I used to have a lot of allergies and sinus infections. All those went away after I quit my dairy.
Soham, we have a bunch of questions. So if you appreciate that very detailed answer, but if all your answers are going to be this detailed, we'll be here. You'll be awake for a long time.
I'm fine with that, but I shared this because I think this is quite a powerful story, and people connect to stories. So that's why I took the time. But go ahead.
Thank you for
Next
that.
question.
Yeah, before we move on to the next question, and actually hearing from our other panelist, Dr. Bindra, I just want to make a quick mention that we are launching our diabetes program. We'll hear more about that from Dr. Amit Gupta, who will be on. I also want to welcome our health heroes who will be joining us shortly. And so we have a lot of more juicy stuff coming up. So please stay tuned. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Soham Patel, for joining us from Florida.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Patel will come back with more questions in a little bit. Now, let me welcome Amit Gupta. He's actually a doctor. He's a PhD doctor, not a medical doctor. And I'm so glad to invite Dr. Gupta to introduce the diabetes program. Dr. Gupta, please take over.
Thank you so much, Praveen. So let's talk quickly about the diabetes program that we're setting up, why we're setting up, and what do we hope to accomplish. So very quickly, the goal is to meaningfully reduce the impact of diabetes on our community. And as you heard from this excellent presentation from Dr. Patel, diabetes already impacts more than 500 million people. It affects many, many major organs. And in fact, currently, if you have COVID, the severity of the disease and your prognosis is very, very adversely impacted if you have diabetes or associated metabolic syndrome. And unfortunately, we South Asians are 6 times more susceptible to diabetes, partly due to genetic reasons and partly due to lifestyle factors. The good news is that we can make a difference. And that's the reason why we're setting this up. So let's first talk about me. Who am I? I'm not a doctor. And why do I care about this? So to me, it is very, very personal. So I'm an engineer by training. I studied IIT Delhi, when I came to Berkeley. Then I became an entrepreneur, started two companies. And I was myself diagnosed with diabetes in 2013, about 7 years ago. And I made some significant lifestyle changes in 2019, not quite to the same degree, but similar to what Dr. Patel just described. And the net was I got my A1C down from 10.8 to 5.6, which is a pretty good accomplishment. And I got to 5.6 without any medications. And I've hopefully been able to keep this for the last year or so.
That's
And
incredible, Dr. Gupta. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to acknowledge, this is the kind of health heroes that we would like to bring, because we all take inspiration from each other, and that is mind blowing. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very happy to see that. And the key result that we want out of the diabetes program is for diabetics to actually have the what's called remission of diabetes, which means that your A1C goes back to normal levels and you're not taking insulin or any medication, or if you're taking them, it's a dramatically low dosage. And for non-diabetics, you never get to the diabetes stage. But more importantly, for all of us to have a good enough knowledge to apply this in our everyday life, like what you heard from Dr. Patel in how to choose your foods, how to make sure you're getting proper exercise, how to make sure you don't have that much blue light, especially late at night. And enough to not just apply it in your own life, but also to be able to share and help others as you go along. As you can imagine, a problem that affects 500 million people, we can't solve it by ourselves. We really need to build this as a community initiative. And this goes along the classic CWC principles of EI, educate, inspire, empower, and then have the impact. And for this purpose, a bunch of different activities that we're planning. We don't need to necessarily go into the specific of this. The only thing that I would kind of keep in mind is this is a very large problem, and we can't do it all ourselves. So we will be relying on a network of partners to help us get there, to help us make a dent in this disease. So what are we asking for right now? So first and foremost, this needs some really, really good people to come join us in this movement. And frankly, we need people with all kinds of expertise in many different areas and many, many different levels. Frankly, the more important thing is not necessarily having expertise. You can also contribute, even if you don't have any expertise before. But all you need is you should really, really care about helping others. As long as you have that, we can get everything else. So anyway, if you have any questions, please call me. I have my number here. Call me on the phone or put a message on this chat and we'll follow up. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Amit, for announcing diabetes program. I think a lot of South Asians would be able to benefit from it. So audience, please feel free to join this program. Contact Amit, send an email to CWC's email that you always get on emails, etc. We are here to support you so that you can get your health back from diabetes. And with that, I would like to invite Doug to speak for a couple of minutes. And Doug Amos, he's an entrepreneur in semiconductor industry. He's a dedicated health advocate. So, Doug?
Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I've got 2 minutes, so I'm going to make this as brief as possible. I basically was a person who grew up under the standard American diet, and as we all do, we unconsciously or subconsciously just follow the patterns that we've been given by our parents, by our communities of what to eat, how much to eat, and that type of thing. And as a result of that, I basically gained quite a bit of weight. And when I started my journey towards better health, I was probably around 284 pounds, and I've lost about 84 pounds, 84 or 85 pounds now. So I'm just down a little below, I'm at 180 thereabouts right now. Anyway, so the bottom line is the thing that was most important is I was open to learning about what I could do and what reality was. And so a lot of the myths and a lot of the traditions that I felt was this is how things were ended up weren't that way at all. So the thing which we can do different from other types of animals is that we have the ability to intellectually and cognitively learn about our disease, and then we can take action to make things different for ourselves in the future. So the classes that they're talking about with CWC are really important assets for all of us to take a look at to make sure we're on a path which leads us to health and basically stay away from the path that takes us towards disease. And so that is basically which I have a website, which I won't bother you with now, no time, but there's plenty of resources available. But the thing is, it's what you do that is going to make a difference. And the number one thing would be probably a whole food, plant-based diet. If you just take that one thing, that is a major step in the direction. But because we're traditionally our families have programmed us to eat this particular food or that particular food, it's really hard for people to let go. And that I have dear relatives who I tried to convince, but they can't give up the cheese and they can't give up the meat, and it's basically going to cause them problems down the road. So I wish you all on your journeys as you go forward, stick with CWC and their programs because they're teaching the right stuff. And it's impressive to see a community that cares for itself the way that this group has done for the community here in the Bay Area, but also around the world. So I'm proud to be associated with them, and I'll send it back to you.
Doug, thank you so much for sharing your story and also inspiring all of us. With that, I would like to invite Mahavir Sharma, Chairman of Thai Global Board of Trustees, to say a few words.
Thank you, Praveen. And I wouldn't want to stay between important questions being answered by our guest, Dr. Patel. Thai Global has been very happy and proud to be partnering with ICCCWC. And it's such great learning every day from mental health to diabetes to cancer next month. I think we really look forward to this every month. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Praveen, Soham, Dr. Pankaj, everyone. Over to you, Praveen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mahavir.
Actually, let's call upon Dr. Archana Bindra. She's been patiently waiting, and let's hear from her as our resident endocrinologist expert who's part of the Crack the Wellness Code movement.
Yeah, Dr. Archana Bindra, welcome. So just to give a little bit of introduction, I know I touched upon it a little bit. Dr. Archana Bindra is the past president of AAPIO, American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. She's an endocrinologist, diabetes and metabolism, internal medicine, and she's also a doctor patron at CWC-ICC. Welcome.
Very much. Thank you, Pankaj, and everyone for having me this evening. And good morning to people elsewhere. That was an excellent presentation, Dr. Patel. And there was incredible stories from Dr. Gupta as well as from Doug. My practice, I've been practicing for the past 15 years, and I was part of the landmark diabetes prevention program in the 1990s, prior to even starting fellowship and practice. My practice is slightly different. It is 2/3 of diabetes and of course other endocrine problems. But I do see the whole spectrum of diabetes, right from pre-diabetes all the way until very, very poorly managed, uncontrolled type 2 diabetes with extremely elevated hemoglobin A1Cs. And for all of you that don't know that term, an A1C, a hemoglobin A1C is essentially your control of blood sugars for the past 3 months. We typically would like that to be in the range of 6.5 to 7. but some of them are 10, 12, 14, which correlate with sugars close to 3, 4, 500. So you would definitely want to be close to 100 in that range. I'm very much a follower of a plant-based diet, and I do totally believe in it. And I think once you are on a plant-based diet, hopefully you never have to come and see somebody like me, and never be a patient in that range, because that would not be very healthy or ideal. Plant-based diets do lower insulin resistance, increase insulin sensitivity. We do use a lot of intermittent fasting in our practices, and so I saw some questions on intermittent fasting. There usually 8 hours of fasting, typically between 10 or 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then 16 hours of, 8 hours of eating and 16 hours of fasting is typically the picture. You eat between 10 or 11 to 6 p.m., and then you fast overnight from 6 p.m. till 11 a.m. And that has really reduced insulin resistance and improved sensitivity. Patients have actually improved their diets along with a plant-based diet. They have been able to decrease their hemoglobin A1Cs just on that alone from 10 to 5.5, as you saw it with Dr. Gupta. And it is one factor. When people are diagnosed with diabetes, I wanted to bring one more factor before I propose my question to Dr. Patel. And the beta cells that are given to you as part of your pancreas, and those beta cells secrete insulin. And it's almost like a gift given, where you're given 100% when you're born, and you pretty much want to keep that 100% going until the very end. But when you're diagnosed with diabetes, you lose approximately 50% of that beta cell function. And once you go on a plant-based diet, or you go on even anything else that would limit your caloric carbohydrate intake and have a healthy base diet, that improves that beta cell function to some extent. My question to Dr. Patel is that at what point in your practice, you, like me, being an endocrinologist, you probably see patients who are on with very high blood sugars. And so at what point do you feel that a plant-based diet doesn't really, it doesn't help anymore, you have to go onto medications? Is there a cutoff, or do you sort of transition and help them with it? What do you do?
Dr. Bindra, that situation comes in my practice as well. The approach that I've taken is for patients who have glucotoxicity, where their sugars have been running high in the 300s or above range for a while, and they are affecting their beta cells, the gift that they've been given, which they already lost quite a bit of it, and they're still losing it as the sugars are running high. While I'm getting them to work on making lifestyle changes and whole food plant-based way of eating, I may actually start them on a low dose of insulin, so that I can get their sugars down and stop that process of acute damage happening to the beta cells. And as they work on changing their lifestyle, I then quickly also work with them to de-escalate and get them off the insulin as soon as possible. But using that insulin initially as a stopgap or a bandage can actually help preserve their beta cell mass from deteriorating further. And for patients who I see who are already on high doses of insulin, requiring some of them are on something that we call a U500 insulin, which is 5 times concentrated. So they're getting anywhere from 600 to 900 units of insulin a day. On those patients, typically helping them to start working on intermittent fasting, like you explained, 16 hours of no food overnight with an 8 or 10 hour feeding window. That starts improving their sugars, and then we can get them on a lower dose of insulin while they work on adding more whole plant foods. The one thing that I typically see here is soda, which is, people don't like to drink water many times here in US, and they consume a lot of soda, and many times they're drinking diet soda, which they think that's not causing any damage. But I've seen clinically, just by stopping diet soda, every day, they can easily see a drop of 1 or 2 points on the A1C, like go from a 9% to a 7% or a 10 to a 8 many times. So yes, I use my lifestyle approach, but I'm not using it as an and or. It's a combination. For someone who is newly diagnosed and the A1C is not that high, let's say maybe a 7 or 8%, which means sugars are running in the 150 to 200 range, then I may pursue the lifestyle modification primarily with some metformin. Uh, but for someone who has an A1C about 10% and we want to stop that loss of beta cells, then adding a little bit of insulin early on, along with lifestyle changes, would have a better chance at getting them off insulin and getting their sugars better.
Thank you for that, Dr. Patel. I do have more questions. However, I would like to invite Professor Ramesh Jain. He's from Computer Science Department at UC Irvine. And he also founded a diabetes prevention health tech company. So he's going to share a few points about innovation in the space.
Good evening, everybody, or good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm a computer scientist. I don't know that much about diabetes, but last 10 years or so, after my bout with cancer, where I suffered from gastroesophageal cancer, and luckily I not only survived, but I'm leading perfectly normal life for the last 13 years, in fact, after my cancer. And during that time, I decided to start seeing how can I apply my knowledge in technology, particularly computer science and cybernetics and all these areas, to helping people remain healthy. And in that process, one after the other, one thing that impressed me the most was how our lives changed because of navigation systems. Just few years ago, you can had yellow pages and you had maps and everything, but it was always very difficult to get right information at the right time and go to the place without any mistakes. Now we don't even think about this problem. We just get in and say, take me at this particular location. And your car takes you or your phone takes you to that location. Now, how can we bring this to health? And we started working on this kind of area. And I partner with a very good friend of mine, Dr. Ping Wang, who is an international expert in diabetes. And we started applying what I was developing in my lab to diabetes. One thing led to other, and we decided that we should form a company. So we licensed technology from UCI, and we co-founded a company which is now trying to build a system. Lot of knowledge that you are hearing about what we should eat and what we should not eat, how much exercise should we do, what kind of sleep we should have, and all this kind of thing. But we really do not know how we are doing. Can we help people monitor these things, and can we provide them guidance proactively like a navigation system does? And that's what we are really trying to do. The company is called DiaNavi, and I would be happy to share with you what we are doing and maybe make you a user of this, because ultimately its purpose is how can you navigate through your life when you are diabetes or pre-diabetes, or you just want to be sure that you will never get into this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that, Professor Ramesh Jain. That would be really helpful for a lot of patients. So thank you for taking time to innovate and starting a company, because at the end of the day, it needs to be commercially feasible to reach a lot of people. So thank you for that. With that, I'm going to start asking a few questions. We have a lot of questions here. So my first question from an anonymous attendee, actually, not my question. what are the most effective natural foods to decrease A1C levels? And is there evidence of benefits of methi or fenugreek and Karela, bitter melon? And there are also some other things like guava leaves, etc., which are claimed to reduce the sugar levels.
Methi, Karela, the jamun seed, that's something else that has also been, used quite a bit. Seeds of jamun, the fruit, powder from that. All those, cinnamon, all those have benefits in terms of diabetes, but don't make the mistake of thinking them as medications. That if, people have a thought process, I'm going to take a medication and keep doing what I'm doing without changing my lifestyle. That's not going to give you as much benefit versus if you are making steps to change your way of eating and you're making sure you incorporate Karela and methi and cinnamon and things like that in your daily foods, then you get the best benefit. So yes, they have a lot of benefit. Amla, Karela, methi, cinnamon, they all have benefit in diabetes, but you cannot look at it in isolation. You have to make sure that you're also working on making food changes at the same time to get the best benefit.
Thank you. And that actually leads us to our next question, which is, can you talk about raw veggies versus cooked veggies, and which would you recommend?
So as you go more raw in eating foods, it is less energy intensive for the body to digest that. Now, as you cook the foods, you may make it less vibrant, so to speak, and it requires more energy to digest that. So if you have, if you're trying to detox, then maybe for 2-3 weeks, you can eat just raw fruits and vegetables and go through that process of detox, and then slowly work on adding a combination of cooked foods with raw. So you can have a big raw salad every day, you can eat a lot of fresh raw fruits, and you can have cooked beans with some whole grains. So having a combination of cooked and raw foods over time is more sustainable. You can stay on raw fruits and vegetables consistently if your stomach can handle it. Many times I find people get a lot of gas and stomach issues if they consistently just eat raw. It can get better if you continue doing it for a while, but some people may not. So if you are someone who cannot handle everything raw, it is still a good idea to do it for a few weeks to help your body detox, and then go to a combination of 50-60% raw and 40-50% cooked foods over time.
Along the same lines of questions about sort of healthy foods, there's another one asking about apple cider vinegar.
So apple cider vinegar has benefits in terms of glycemic responses. Like, if you have apple cider vinegar before a meal, 15 ml diluted with some water, it does lower the absorption of glucose, the pace of absorption of glucose. Or you can have it once in the morning every day as a routine. So it does have benefit. But again, as I mentioned earlier, thinking of something as a be-all end-all thing and not looking at your holistic lifestyle change would not get you the results. So apple cider vinegar is great. You can, I've seen people do lemon juice with apple cider vinegar and a little bit of cayenne pepper every day in the morning, which is also a good way to detox. And you can also take it like before a meal that you may think may cause, like, if you are eating a meal with pasta, if it is like white pasta, if you have a 15 ml of apple cider vinegar before it, you will lower the glycemic response. But again, not looking at it in isolation, but looking at it as a combination of things to do.
Yeah, and the way I like to think about it is talk about sort of what's the core message, right? There's a core, and then you have satellites going around the core. And the core of what you said is eating a whole food plant-based diet. And then so that's 80% of the action is right there. And then you might get some additional benefit with methi seeds or karela or jamun or apple cider vinegar. But we tend to kind of take after those little things that we see outside in the satellite rather than focusing on the core, where the majority of the benefit would be. Another question, or actually a couple of them, are in follow-up to what I had asked you initially, which was about dairy and yogurt. And there are follow-up questions to that. And a couple of people are asking if dairy is not so good, if I can't have yogurt, then what do I replace that with?
I think I actually replied back in the chat, and I'm going to repeat that here. Is there are other ways to get probiotics. So a little bit of pickles in your weekly meals, maybe once, twice, 3 times a week. Have a little bit of pickle, which has probiotics. So you're replacing the probiotic by having the pickle, and making sure that you're consuming foods that are loaded with different types of fiber, like different fruits, different vegetables, different beans and lentils, which provides something called the prebiotics. That's the food for the microbiome. So we support the probiotic supply, but we also provide it with the right type of prebiotics, which will help flourish that microbiome and grow and multiply. So just taking probiotics, that's another common mistake I see people doing, is they take all these expensive probiotic capsules every day, but they're not changing their eating pattern. You're literally wasting that money down the drain, because you're not allowing that probiotic in the capsule to grow in your body because of the way you're eating. If you're eating alkaline, fiber-rich foods coming from whole plant foods, you don't need as much probiotic, and a little bit that you get from pickles or some fermented foods. Like in Gujarat, there is something called handwo, which we ferment. I think in South, there, idli is a fermented food. So when you add fermented foods or pickles to your diet, you get probiotics, but you want to make sure you have it supported with fiber-rich foods.
Thank you.
Thank you for that,
Dr. Patel.
Yeah, let me ask one question from AGK Karnakaran, who is new president of TAI. The question is, how much water is good for males, and does it correlate with body weight or age?
So a simple guideline that I share with my patients is to not worry about a number criteria of water intake, like 64 ounces or half of your body weight. Those are, you have those guidelines, but water consumption relates to your activity, your external temperature, atmosphere temperature, a lot. So if I'm in a winter time and the weather is nice and I'm not perspiring as much, I don't need as much water. Versus if I'm in summer and I'm working out in the yard and I'm perspiring more, I need more water. So the two things that I typically tell people is gauge your water intake based on the mouth should feel moist. If you're having to stop and pump some saliva in your mouth to speak, your mouth is getting too dry and you're dehydrated. And the color of your urine should be light yellow or transparent. If it's staying transparent permanent consistently and you're peeing every hour, you're probably consuming too much water. But if you're having a transparent to light yellow urine color and your mouth feels moist all the time, you're consuming enough water. So consume enough at a time, don't sip, but make sure you gauge the water intake based on your activity, your perspiration, and your external temperature in the weather, because that will change how much water you need.
Thank you. And if, with your permission, Dr. Patel, I would like to ask one last question. We have some people attending from far away. This question is from Richard. Why does taking metamorphin tabs over time does not reduce the chance of diabetes reduction? And in fact, why does it increase? Why does the doctor increase the dosage every passing year?
So it's not the metformin that's actually at the fault. As Dr. Bindra had mentioned, she was part of the DPP trial, which was a quite landmark multi-center trial looking at prevention of diabetes. And the data that showed was when you are on metformin, you can actually lower insulin resistance and the risk of diabetes by quite a big percentage. Metformin or any other medication here is not the issue. The issue is, like I mentioned, you are consuming a lot of processed foods, you're consuming foods which are high in fat, and you're consuming a lot of animal foods, which has animal protein. The combination of those leads to insulin resistance, and that process keeps getting worse. Now, you can add metformin, and it helps your body, in particular your liver, utilize insulin in a better manner, but it only has an effect to a certain extent, because if you don't support it with the right lifestyle, the metformin effect is not going to be able to match that. And then over time, someone needs to add another oral medication, and same thing happens, same process continues to be keeping on getting worse, insulin resistance getting worse, and then now you need insulin. So the medication itself is not the issue, but what changes are you doing in your lifestyle? That's the bigger question. And a corollary to that, I want to add and kind of emphasize is, I have seen people make substantial changes in their food, like eating 100% whole food plant-based and having excellent exercise regimen every day. But if you did not focus on getting your good sleep hygiene and keeping your stress under control with meditation, deep breathing, yoga, tai chi, pranayama, whatever modality you liked, I have seen people get disease in spite of eating plant-based and being exercise freaks, because their sleep and stress was not properly addressed. So nutrition is huge, and it's a common place to start, and for many people it can do the job. But there are situations where if you just focus on nutrition and exercise and not look at your sleep or stress management, then you may still end up with disease.
Thank you for that. Dr. Patel, I know it is 11:25 p.m. for you, and we really thank you and appreciate you staying this late, beyond the time you have given us. And audience, thank you for your engagement. We are so glad that you guys are actively participating, getting more value